Welcome to Why You Are So Stuck in Anxiety. My name is Logan Nichols, and I am just so thrilled that you are here joining me today. We are going to dive into the hidden patterns keeping you stuck and how to break it once and for all. I am just so glad that you are here. Since you're joining me today, I would imagine you find yourself overthinking many, if not all, decisions, second guessing yourself in rooms that you've already earned a spot in, or even carrying the constant weight of what if something goes wrong. You can feel your anxiety begin to rise when your boss or maybe a family member calls you randomly in the day, when there's a meeting placed on your calendar, or even just trying to live up to the expectations of others. Maybe you're even experiencing physical symptoms like stomach aches or headaches or even butterflies. I do have to break it to you. Most high achieving and successful women don't have a capability problem. You know what you're doing, you have the experience and the education, but you do have an internal safety problem that's holding you back. So today I'm going to walk you through why you feel stuck, what's really underneath your anxiety, getting to the root, and what actually changes everything. But before we get started, I want to see if anyone else can relate. So raise your hand if you are a firstborn, independent, maybe fixer of all things, a fire sign, recovering perfectionist, and then thrown into leadership at a young age. That for sure is me. I grew up as a high achieving honor roll student, scholarship earning long distance runner, and I ended up following my passion of health and wellness into my career. But once I did drop into my corporate career, that's when everything changed. That's when I began experiencing anxiety, and that's what led me into my passion of helping other high achieving women who are working through the same struggles. So before getting into my story, I am going to introduce myself. I am a certified breathwork and meditation facilitator. I am also certified in adult mental health first aid. I am an operational healthcare leader in various top United States hospitals, and I hold my master and bachelor degrees in healthcare administration and management, nutrition, exercise physiology, psychology, with a certificate in multicultural studies. Fitting enough, I also wrote my master's capstone in accessing work-related stress in healthcare environments. And I have worked in healthcare leadership positions for 10 years now, managing amazing team members while overseeing the operations for the large healthcare departments. So, as you could imagine, anxiety got me here today. There was a time in my life where anxiety just had a hold of me. And when I was in my corporate career, I was just done with college and grad school. I literally thought that that's what life was, and how life would be lived. I would walk into work already spiraling. I was woken up at 3 a.m. with pages and call-offs, so I was, needless to say, not sleeping well. And as I was walking into work, I had a line of employees following me to my office, asking a million questions, having me just fix it all, and I felt like I could not escape. Now, I hid it pretty well because on the outside, everything looked successful. Everything looked like I was holding it together. And people often mention that I always seemed cool, calm, and collected. But they were positive that I was stressed, and they were 1000% correct. Internally, I was just constantly anxious. It was more chaotic on the inside than it was on the outside. And I was people pleasing. I was making others' lives easier And in the long run, I was abandoning myself in the process. I remember thinking on a daily basis, this just can't be what life is. I was suffering and I just did not like where my life was moving towards. But I also thought that my job was the reason why anxiety had such a hold on me. And so I thought all I had to do was change jobs. That was really the problem. That was going to be the solution to everything. But before I changed jobs, kind of during that process of looking for a new job and interviewing, I decided to, instead of just looking at my outside circumstances, I started trying to seek help. And when I began advocating for myself, now this happened after a panic attack in a Target parking lot, I found a therapist who I believed could help me at least navigate what I was feeling. And honestly, it broke me a little bit more because the therapist told me that I should just take a bubble bath to fix my stress. And so, needless to say, I was very discouraged. I left that day just filled with shame and doubt. And I thought, if it was that easy to fix my stress with a bubble bath, then why did it feel so hard every day? Why was I feeling so heavy and why was I feeling so lonely? I began advocating for myself, and man, was that difficult as a people pleaser. But it was also so scary because I thought I was doing what was best for me. I thought I was seeking the help and going to the right people. And I started getting filled with just self-doubt, and my trust started diminishing because I thought one thing, but the people that truly were the ones with the experience or with the education, they were telling me something completely different. And what I did not realize at the time, in the grand scheme of things, is that it wasn't what was happening around me, but really what was happening inside of me. So after all of this, let's fast forward a couple of months. I ended up switching jobs. I ended up finding a new job and moving and thought that this was exactly what I needed. I needed a change from the city I was living in. I needed a change from the environment. I needed just a big change in my life. And that was great for the first 4 months. But once I became settled, once I really started knowing the people I was working with and the job I was working with and what problems to solve, that's when those anxious thoughts and patterns started creeping up on me. So I once believed that if I had just changed the job, changed all these outside circumstances, that's going to fix my life. That was going to fix how I was feeling. That was going to fix my anxiety. That was going to fix my outlook on life. But spoiler alert, it did the exact opposite. So once I began really choosing myself each and every day, investing in myself, and doing the work that I'm going to teach you today, I am now on the other side of things. I am now a confident leader. I'm not dealing with stress or overwhelm. And if those little feelings do come up, I now know how to comfort myself, and I have those tools to fix it if they do come up. So what can you expect in this training today? We're going to look at why high-achieving women can look successful on the outside but still feel anxious underneath it all. If your drive can actually be anxiety in disguise, have you thought of that before? Are the hidden anxiety patterns of overthinking and people-pleasing, perfectionism, and even control keeping you stuck and secretly running your life. We're going to look at how anxiety quietly shapes your relationships and your career, your confidence, and even your daily decisions. We're going to look at the real reason just be confident never really works when your nervous system doesn't feel safe. Wouldn't that be so easy if you could just say just be confident and it fixes itself? We're going to look at why rest feels uncomfortable and slowing down just feels wrong and peace feels unfamiliar to yourself. We're going to look at how to identify your personal anxiety patterns so you stop treating the symptom and actually start solving at the root of it. We're looking at the difference between actually managing your anxiety and then rewiring the patterns creating it, and what's actually keeping you from the life that you know you're meant for. So this is the first step to actually breaking free, but we're going to dive into it just a little bit further to finally understand what's really driving your anxiety. So the fact that you have showed up today is already a huge step and a huge milestone in itself. But you probably are also a high-achieving, successful woman who seems to have it all together on the outside but really feels exhausted on the inside. And it doesn't have to be physical exhaustion, but mentally, emotionally, and energetically. You know, maybe you're tired of just overthinking or carrying the invisible weight. Tired of looking like you truly do have it all together while feeling overwhelmed and sinking underneath it all. Maybe you have heard yourself say, I'll send that email after I rewrite it 12 more times. That is perfectionism disguised as productivity. You stay busy fixing those tiny details, over-preparing, and rechecking everything. Not because it really needs it, but because mistakes feel unsafe to you. Or have you heard yourself say, of course I can help? And what a genuine feeling that is. But that can be people-pleasing disguised as kindness. And when you offer help, you're doing that when you're overwhelmed and exhausted and already frustrated and holding it all in. But you're saying yes to avoid the guilt and the disappointment or that conflict, not because you actually have the capacity to do so. Now, maybe you've thought if you don't handle it, it won't get done right. That can be control disguised as responsibility. And when you start to think that, you take on everything and you're managing everyone and you're struggling to delegate because letting go can feel risky. It can look like being responsible, but underneath it's fear of uncertainty. You believe that if you don't stay busy or keep going, that it's not going to look or you won't look successful. Maybe you've heard yourself say that you're really just driven. And that can be burnout disguised as ambition. Because your body is actually exhausted. Your mind never shuts off and rest feels hard or even lazy. But in the background, you call it ambition. But on the long term, you've actually been running on anxiety and survival mode for far too long. Because doing more is never enough because you just keep adding more to your plate. Maybe you're currently feeling stuck between who you physically are right now and who you know that you are capable of becoming. Maybe you've been feeling frustrated because you know what you should do, like set boundaries or stop people pleasing or trusting yourself, resting, resting without guilt. Maybe you're supposed to slow down or speak up. But doing those actions, however large or small that they feel, actually doing it feels so hard. And maybe you truly feel disconnected from yourself. You spent so much time managing everyone else's expectations that you're no longer sure what you actually want or who you actually are. And you feel anxious in those situations that shouldn't feel hard. Those simple decisions feel heavy, or rest feels uncomfortable. And even success, whatever that means to you, still feels unsatisfying. But underneath it all, you've maybe been asking yourself, why do I feel like this? Or why can't I just relax? Why do the same patterns keep repeating themselves? And why do I feel stuck when I've done so much work? Have you ever thought those thoughts before? But the fact that you are here today means that you don't want another quick fix and you really do want change because you are just done surviving. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, you do know at the root of it all that anxiety is costing you too much. It's costing you your peace. It's costing you your confidence in your relationships, your energy and joy, and your ability to fully show up in your own life on your own terms. Maybe you're tired of performing, and not the stage performing, but performing strength and performing for other people. Performing on the outside while privately you are just feeling so overwhelmed. Maybe you're just tired of being the strong one or the dependable one, the one that's always holding it together, not only for yourself, but for everyone else. And you want to stop living in reaction and start living with intention. Maybe you want more clarity or more calmness. Maybe you want confidence. You want to get to the root and you want tools that are actually going to work in real life and not just have someone tell you just think more positively. But most of all, I think that you probably joined because you know that there has to be more to life than this. You want to feel safe in your own mind, in your own body, and you want to feel safe showing up as yourself. The thing with anxiety is it does not look the same for everyone, and it doesn't always come in this grand stage of it all. It doesn't always look like panic attacks or obvious overwhelm. But it can look like high-functioning, successful women who seem like they have it all together with the bow on top of it all. But on the inside, you are just exhausted. You have constant mental noise. You're overthinking. You're replaying conversations. You're second-guessing yourselves. You're feeling like you really have to do more to finally feel enough. You know, it really does look like perfectionism disguised as productivity, or people-pleasing disguised as kindness, control disguised as responsibility, or even that burnout showing up as ambition. And you begin to struggle to rest without guilt. You feel behind even when you're accomplishing so much. And you begin to crave peace, but you don't know how to slow down without feeling uncomfortable. You want to say no, but in reality, you're actually saying yes to things. You're beginning to shrink, and you're avoiding hard conversations. You're just trying to keep people comfortable. And you tend to stay in places longer than you truly need to be, because the uncertainty of it all feels scarier than staying stuck. So I really want you to get honest with yourself right now. What is your anxiety costing you at this moment? It impacts your relationships because we all struggle to communicate our needs, or we have fear coming up that's disappointing others, or even we prioritize everyone else before yourself. And so with this, you over-explain and over-give, over-carry, and you begin to confuse love with self-sacrifice. Even saying yes when you mean no, or avoiding conflict to keep the peace, you begin to have some other feelings coming to the surface, like resentfulness, or even feeling just disconnected or unseen. This also affects your careers because you begin to tie your worth to your achievements. You start to see imposter syndrome show up, and you feel like you have to prove yourself. Even though you're high achieving, it just never feels enough. Even when you had this success and something amazing come up, you had this huge win, you don't take the time to truly soak it in and be proud of yourself, but your mind immediately moves to what is next. It affects your health because chronic stress keeps your nervous system in that survival mode. It leads to exhaustion, poor sleep, and emotional burnout on top of digestive issues and even like muscle tension, because your body is feeling like it is constantly on. And so when you are constantly going and you're not taking a breaks, you're functioning, but you're not feeling the best that you can. Now, this also affects your confidence because when anxiety is leading, trust gets very quiet. And that's when the doubt begins to come in. Second guessing yourselves is more of a constant battle. And you begin to look for reassurance outside of yourself. You begin to struggle to just trust or even make decisions. And you fear that making the wrong choice is going to lead down the wrong path. So you begin to not make any choice, and you live in that fear, and you stay stuck in that indecision. But one of the biggest things where you are probably seeing anxiety costing you right now is that your life, you are meant for so much more, so much more. And anxiety just keeps you close to safety, or as we think is safe, but so far away from freedom. It keeps you playing small, avoiding risks, and really just delaying the life that you want. You were made for more than just coping and getting through the motions. And at the end of the day, you are here because you are ready to finally become the woman that you are underneath all of this anxiety. Anxiety doesn't just create stress, but it creates a distance between who you physically are right at this moment to what you really do want to become. And that is why this work matters so much. This is why I am doing the work, and I have done the work. I have embodied this work because I have seen that it has helped me in so many different ways, but that it actually works. We're not here just to manage your anxiety, but to help you finally feel safe being yourselves, trusting your decisions, living that bigger, bolder, and more freer life. For a lot of women that I do work with, it's not that they don't know what to do. but they keep finding themselves in this anxiety loop. Because let's say, for example, they begin to overthink. And when they're overthinking this decision, then they may avoid actually making a decision. And so they're going to stay the same. They're not going to make that change. And because they don't see any movement, they're going to begin feeling frustrated. And it's just going to repeat and repeat and repeat in that same cycle. Now, something that is funny enough, with all of this, you, I'm sure, are feeling anxiety right now, even just talking about it, because it can feel uncomfortable. But that is our body and that is our nervous system trying to keep you safe, because it doesn't know what's on the other side. It's helping us, in a way, avoid what we can perceive as leading us into unsafe territory. But the thing is, if we don't begin to fix these triggers and look at our patterns and really break away from the cycle that we're in, over time, this is just going to be our identity. So if you're sitting here thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, or I have a good life, so why am I still anxious? Why can't I just turn this off? Why can't I just walk into work or wake up every morning without something looming over me? I want you to hear this. Your anxiety makes sense. There is nothing wrong with you. And your anxiety doesn't have to be your personality. You have just been carrying a lot for a long time. You've been operating in high pressure environments, and you're used to being the one that holds it all together. Of course, your system is overwhelmed. Of course, your mind is trying to protect you. Imagine you trying to carry groceries in, and maybe you're the type of person that can only make one trip from the car to your kitchen. And so you have all the bags on your wrists and on your arms. You're carrying a gallon of milk and maybe a watermelon. And by the time you are crawling in the door from carrying all of these bags and all of these groceries, you're worn out, even when it was just a couple steps away. When you take the bags off of your arms and your wrists, you have those indentions. It's just like the anxiety. We're just carrying so much. And so it starts to make an imprint in our lives. Now, I want you to hear some of these statistics because you are not alone. The National Institute of Mental Health has conducted many studies, and it has shown that women are nearly twice as likely as men to experience anxiety disorders. Nearly 1 in 4 women experience anxiety each and every year. And not only is anxiety one of the most common mental health conditions in the United States, but it also affects your confidence, your relationships, how you show up as a leader and in your career. But it also shows up with your daily functions and how you truly feel in your day-to-day life. Not only are you carrying this anxiety and you're feeling it, but burnout can also be disguised as ambition, and 1 in 3 women say that they very often or always feel burned out at work because they are more engaged but also carrying more mental and emotional load. When women take on more responsibilities or even take on higher roles, they begin to experience more anxiety and even at a higher burnout rate. And this probably doesn't surprise you, but women are more likely to struggle with imposter syndrome and trying to prove it all. So imagine this. Please just sit where you currently are, close your eyes, and think, what would my life actually look like if anxiety wasn't running this? What if this wasn't your forever? What if anxiety just wasn't something that you have to live with, but something that you could actually heal, something you could understand and move through? Because the one thing that people don't say out loud is you are not destined to feel like this for the rest of your life, unless you truly choose to and you want to stay here, but you can get to the other side of it. So I want you to imagine what begins to shift when anxiety is no longer running the show. Maybe you can walk into work with a calm and clear mind instead of actually feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're focused enough to lead and speak up. Instead of replaying all of these conversations in your mind, making all the decisions, whether they're small or large, or even having these what ifs on a loop. What if your relationships begin to feel softer and you're not snapping or overreacting or withdrawing from your life because your nervous system just isn't on edge all the time? Maybe you're more present with your kids and your partner in your life, and you don't feel like you're physically here, but mentally somewhere else anymore. You're not stuck in survival mode. And maybe, just maybe, you stop living with that quiet background fear of I'm going to look back and regret how I lived my life. Because we're not just going to cope anymore, we're actually going to live it. So before we go any further, I want us all to pause. And pause, I mean truly pause. I want you to put your phone away. I want you to put all the distractions away. And I want you to have this time for yourself. Grab your journal. You can always come back to these slides and come back to this training. But I want you to just truly center yourself as we go through these next few slides. I want you to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. I want you to feel your feet on the ground and your body in the chair. And I want you to begin to connect to your body. Anything that you're thinking about in your mind, let it go. And I just want you to take 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Begin to let all your stress, anxiety, and worries float away. I want you to release the tongue from the roof of your mouth and move your shoulders down away from your ears. And once you feel centered, I want you to ask yourself, what is the life that I actually want? If you need to take time and pause this video, please do so. If you need to come back to this, please do so. But I want you to embody, really move all the distractions away and be here and begin to think through, what is the life that I actually want? What is this life on the other side of this anxiety? How would you wake up and feel? How would you move throughout your day? How would you show up? How would your schedule look? Who are the people around you? Go through your senses. What are you feeling? What are you tasting and smelling and hearing and seeing? And when you lay yourself down at night, how do you want to feel? And I don't want you to write down what looks good on paper or the ones that you've been conditioned to chase. But truly, what do you want to feel? Do you want to feel calm, confident, supported, in control? Maybe where you can fully express yourself, or where your job doesn't follow you home. And after you do this journal prompt, I am doing a giveaway. So if you message me on Instagram, my contact information is at the end of this slide deck. But if you message me your answer to this question, what is the life that you actually want? I will send you a freebie for your action taken in this question. So, anxiety appears in so many different areas of life. The next question that I want you to think about is, why is this so important for me to change this? How I'm feeling right now, the anxiety, the overwhelm, insert anything you're feeling or what's happening. Maybe even what you're truly feeling inside your body. Why is that so important for you to get on the other side? And we're doing this because I want you to truly connect to yourself, but to connect to your purpose and your why. Because if we continue to tolerate a life that feels misaligned, it's not going to change. Maybe you're feeling anxious despite feeling successful and being a high achiever. Maybe you think that you have it all together, but you still have to feel like this. And you've tried everything, but you're just ready for a change. Maybe you feel misunderstood or unheard in your struggle, and no one understands your experience. I have been there, and I am so excited to walk with you on your journey and to see this change in your life. So picture this. Maybe Sunday afternoon rolls around. You don't know where the weekend went, and you have an entire list to accomplish. Your kids may be running around the house, getting their energy out, and all you're trying to do is get dinner on the table. But you have to answer to 50,000 questions about what you're eating and why you're eating and at what time, and I don't like the meal. So needless to say, you are tired. You're already tired, and you haven't even walked into your full week ahead. Some people call it the Sunday scaries, but you are just simply not ready for the week ahead, and you're already dreading it. You're avoiding looking at your calendar to calm your anxiety, but your anxious thoughts are already in full force. You have a presentation due, a micromanaging boss to answer to, maybe family appointments, and in your mind there's just constant chaos. You don't feel like you have a minute to yourself, and you grew up feeling like you had to get everything done perfectly or even everything crossed off your list to be productive and to feel successful. You feel in this busy state and you never feel rested. And even when you go to bed early, you toss and turn and you begin to think about what you need to do tomorrow or what you left downstairs. But what if it doesn't have to be like this? What if you truly trusted yourself in high-stakes situations? Or you walked into rooms without shrinking? What if you made decisions without spiraling for hours afterwards? Or what if your job just didn't follow you home? What if you could actually show up to work, not feel anxious, you show up as yourself, confident, full of joy, and without overthinking? What if you're able to have hard conversations without spending so much time playing out what to say or what you should have said? I am just so thrilled to tell you that that version of you is not far away. It is on the other side of this work. It is on the other side of learning how to work with your mind and body instead of against them. So when I talk to women, some of the beliefs are keeping you stuck and in the same cycle. And we call these your limiting beliefs. Things like, this is just who I am, or I've always been anxious, or maybe it's genetics. I just need to manage it better, or I just don't have time to do this. These beliefs are keeping you in the exact same patterns. Because if you believe that nothing will change, you're not going to take the actions to change them, and nothing will change. It's going to keep you in the same cycle, and it's going to be that belief that anxiety is what keeps you successful and safe and in control. It begins to sound like, if I stop worrying, I'm going to fall behind. Or if I say no, people are going to be disappointed in me. If I'm not perfect, I'm going to fail. If I slow down, everything will fall apart. And if I'm not needed, I'm just not valuable. So even though you say you want peace, part of your mind sees peace as dangerous. Stress feels productive. Overthinking feels responsible. People-pleasing feels safe. And control feels necessary. So this is when your nervous system begins to trust that anxiety more than the peace, because it feels familiar with the anxiety, even if it is exhausting. That's what feels safe. It's that belief that keeps you in the same cycle of overworking and overthinking and overgiving and never fully resting. But the truth is, peace does not make you less successful. It makes you safer and clearer and more powerful. But until you begin to challenge that limiting belief, before you begin to challenge that belief that struggle equals worth, anxiety is going to continue feeling like that safe home to you. So I want to lovingly call something out. And it's not that you can't change this, because you definitely can. It's that you haven't been shown how to change it at the root. Most people are performing in life, and maybe you don't even realize it. But when you try to make that change, those changes are surface level or quick fixes, or even avoiding the deeper work because it just feels really messy and uncomfortable. And that's why you haven't seen any change. And that's why most people stay the same. In my example, that I thought that all I needed to do was change jobs because that's where I saw my anxiety. After I changed the jobs, my anxiety came back. And so I found that the same problems tended to follow me. My anxiety began flaring up. I didn't feel safe. I started taking on more projects without recognition or compensation, and I didn't want to disappoint my team. And as that cycle continues, you just don't know how to make things better. And you then begin feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. You begin to resent work, maybe your team or management and your company. And you can't separate work from home and can't break away from it. But here's where most people get this wrong. Anxiety isn't the real problem. It's a symptom. Because underneath anxiety is usually a lot of fears. The fear of losing control, the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, or even the fear of success. And your mind begins to create anxiety to try to keep you safe from those things. So if you're only trying to get rid of your anxiety, that's where you're going to stay stuck because you're not really addressing what is underneath those. So here are the top 4 fears that tend to drive anxiety. These patterns aren't personality traits. They are protection strategies rooted in fear. So the first one is overthinking. And this is looking like the fear of making the wrong decision, right? You start to see that fear of failure, regret, judgment, uncertainty, maybe losing control, or even disappointing others. And you begin to think, if I don't think about this long enough, then I can prevent something bad from happening. If I really just think and think and think, I can take us down any which path, and I can stop anything bad from happening. It allows you to make that decision and trust yourself and know where you can handle whatever comes next. So maybe right now, you are replaying every decision. You're asking 17 people for advice, and you still feel unsure. But then we've done the work, we've gotten to the root, and after now, on the other side of this, you can now make the decision. You can trust yourself. You can know that you can handle whatever comes next. And it looks like you don't need perfect certainty in order to move forward. Now, perfectionism. Haven't we all been there? This is that fear of not being enough. Fear of criticism, fear of shame or judgment, vulnerability, or even just being exposed. Or maybe you think if you're not perfect, then people will just scout you out and you're incapable of doing anything. Maybe you start to think that if you do everything perfectly, no one can reject me. Before we do the work, and maybe where you are right now, perfectionism shows up like delaying anything, delaying any action. Maybe you obsess over the details. And maybe you begin to think that any mistake you make means that you are a failure. But after we do the work, you're going to take action before you truly feel ready and let done be better than looking perfect. And you begin to say to yourself, your worth is not based on flawless performance. Now we are at the avoider. And that's that fear of discomfort, confrontation, hard conversations, emotional overwhelm, making anything worse. And you begin to think that if you can avoid this, then you can avoid any pain. Maybe right now, before the work, you are avoiding any hard conversation. You're delaying any decision. and you hope that any problem will just fix itself on its own. But after, you begin leaning into those uncomfortable conversations. You're taking action, and you're trusting yourself enough to handle the outcome. And you can say to yourself that discomfort is not danger. Now, people pleasing. This is that fear of rejection, of abandonment, of conflict, that fear of being disliked or disappointing people, being seen as selfish or even just not enough. You think if everyone else is okay with me, then I'm safe. Right now, maybe you're saying yes when you mean to say no, or you over-explain yourself and feel responsible for everyone else's emotions. But after the work that we're going to do, you begin communicating clearly, honoring your needs. You're going to stop abandoning yourself in order to make other people feel comfortable. And you begin to say that you can disappoint someone and still be a good person. You know, underneath people pleasing is this fear of rejection. This fear of rejection isn't just about someone not liking you, but it also can show up like if they're upset with you, then I'm unsafe. If I disappoint them, then I lose connection. If I say no, then they're going to leave me. If I'm fully myself, I'll be too much, or maybe the opposite of not enough. So you adapt, you become easy to love, easy to work with, easy to depend on, and you begin to soften your opinions. You begin to over-explain your boundaries or even apologize for things that just don't need apologies. And you begin to carry that emotional burden for everyone around you. And on the outside, maybe it looks like kindness, but underneath it's survival. Because somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned that love must be earned, approval means safety, conflict is danger, and being needed is how you stay connected. That rejection doesn't feel like a simple no. It feels like shame and abandonment and proof that maybe you just were never enough to begin with. And that's why boundaries feel terrifying. That's why speaking up often feels selfish, and disappointing someone can just ruin your entire day. Now we're going to begin challenging an old belief that says that your worth depends on how well I keep everyone else happy. Beginning to heal this fear can look like someone being disappointed in you and you knowing that this does not mean that you did something wrong. Someone misunderstanding you does not make you unworthy. Someone leaving you does not make you unlovable. And your needs do not make you difficult. Healing means choosing that self-respect over the external approval. It also means realizing that the people meant for you won't require your self-abandonment to stay. So next we're going to move into each of the four fears and the four patterns that make up this anxiety that we were just talking about. So if you think that you are an overthinker, your mind is always trying to solve safety. You're going to replay those conversations and analyze every single decision. And you're going to prepare for every single possible outcome so that nothing can go wrong. This is where you're protecting yourself. But instead of protecting yourself, your body is going to be kept in a constant state of threat. And that overactivity is what becomes your anxiety. So when you begin to know this pattern and observe this pattern and dig deeper and heal this pattern, you are going to learn how to quiet that mental noise and come back to the present moment. You're going to stop the spiraling and begin trusting yourself. And you begin to feel like your mind can be a place that you can rest. Now, our lovely perfectionist, you believe that if you get everything right, you can prevent any type of rejection or failure or judgment. And so you hold yourself to these high standards. You over-prepare and overwork and overcorrect. But your nervous system reads that not perfect means not safe. And so that's where this pressure turns into the anxiety. And so when you heal this pattern, you stop tying your worth to your performance and you begin to act without overthinking every detail. And you start feeling safe being yourself. Now, if you are an avoider, when things begin to feel uncomfortable, you start to disconnect. And you delay conversations and you ignore decisions. And you begin just pushing things down further and further and further. And your anxiety starts to get louder because you just have so many things unprocessed and kept in your body. So when you start healing this pattern, you build that capacity to stay present without shutting down. And that's when your anxiety begins to lose its power because you're no longer afraid of what you actually feel and you begin trusting yourself, knowing that you can handle it instead of escaping it. Last but not least is the people pleaser. Based off what people need, that's how you adjust yourself. You say yes when you mean no, and each time you do that, you abandon yourself little by little. And this internal conflict, knowing that that's not who you really are, that is what creates that anxiety. So when you begin to heal this pattern, you start choosing yourself without guilt. You learn that being honest doesn't equal being unsafe. And your anxiety decreases because you are no longer abandoning yourself. So the women who actually do this work, everything begins to shift and everything begins to change. They trust themselves. They regulate their emotions in real time. They stop living in that constant fear and start showing up as leaders in their life and in their career. This isn't about becoming a different person, but it is about becoming the version of you that's been buried under all of this anxiety. I wanted to take you through a couple of real client results. We've done this work and I wanted to show that it really does work. One of my clients, I had to laugh because they were skeptical at first. She said, I really didn't know what I was signing up for, but it actually works and these results are real. So this client number one, she told me that she knew her job, but she just couldn't use her voice. Before we started doing the work, she was very capable in her role, but she struggled speaking up with confidence. Her manager often dominated the conversation, and she found herself just shrinking in meetings, second-guessing any of her thoughts, and just avoiding all boundaries. Even when she had strong ideas that felt really good, she rarely voiced them. And so this created that constant anxiety. She kept overthinking the interactions and replaying conversations and ended up being overlooked in a lot of things. And so when we did do this work together, we focused on building up that internal safety around speaking up and identifying her patterns of people pleasing and silencing herself. But we also, once we looked at the root and did that work in the core, we started working on real-time tools that she could use before and during her meetings to ground herself and stay present in her body. So now, after doing that work, she now confidently speaks up and shows up to work. She can even talk to her leadership without spiraling beforehand or even after replaying all those conversations. She can clearly communicate what she needs. She knows herself best. And she no longer walks into rooms shrinking. Her energy is so high, and she knows that she can show up as herself. Now, my client number 2, she said that she was a manager, but she couldn't make any decision, whether it was a very small decision or a larger decision that needed a lot of data and action behind it. Even in a leadership role where she was able to climb the ladder, she felt stuck and overwhelmed. Any decision felt just mentally exhausting. And she would just overanalyze and get stuck in all of these planning loops and wouldn't be able to move ideas into actions. And any conversation, especially those difficult conversations, felt really stressful. And so she often avoided or delayed those. And as a manager, that's not the best course of action. So we did a lot of work together, working on breaking that overthinking cycle. We worked on her emotional tolerance for discomfort. We also learned how to process different emotions, that uncertainty without freezing, and beginning to regulate her nervous system before having those hard conversations and before walking into those rooms that she didn't feel safe in. We also focused on releasing that pressure that she had to get it perfect and had to get it right in order to move forward. So now she moves through decisions with more ease and clarity. She's not stuck in that analysis paralysis, and she's able to process information, even work through her emotions, and move forward, continuing that momentum. She doesn't avoid conversations anymore, and now she leads with confidence, with presence, and leading with her true self. And the last client I wanted to share with you is everything had to be perfect or I just couldn't relax. She lived in this constant state of pressure, maintaining perfections. Even as a child, she had to have straight A's, and so she carried it into adulthood. Her house had to be perfectly cleaned or she couldn't go to sleep at night. And everything just had to be right in order for her to enjoy life. So because of this, she canceled a lot of plans, her sleep was poor, and her mind never fully shut off. And even when things seemed fine, she still felt like something was off or something was going to happen. And so that's where that anxiety began showing up as restlessness, control, and that inability to become present. So we had to really loosen that perfectionism as a safety strategy. We had to work through the idea that rest is earned because it is not earned. And she was in that internal pressure loop that kept her in constant monitoring, constant fixing. She had to release that guilt around slowing down and rebuilding trust within herself. So now she's able to rest. She's able to rest without justifying it or thinking she had to earn it first. Her home doesn't need to be perfect for her to clean it or to feel calm. She can still just feel, leave things undone. And her productivity or her idea of productivity has changed. And she feels so much more safe now in her life. So here's what I want you to take from this. First, I hope that you are able to see your anxiety pattern, but I want you to see that anxiety is not permanent and it's not your personality. It is not something that you are stuck with forever. But it does require you to decide. Are you going to keep tolerating this? Or are you ready to change it? Because if you are ready to dive deeper, I have a couple next steps for you that I have created. The first being the anxiety pattern audit quiz. Now, you will get the link if you haven't taken this quiz already. But this is going to highlight and show you where these patterns keep showing up for you. Are you an overthinker, an avoider, a people pleaser, or a perfectionist? So this is going to begin highlighting where this pattern is coming up. Because then after that, I am going to offer you a free one-on-one private session. Because I want you to feel confident enough to walk through your results and start putting those pieces together so that we can dive into healing that pattern. Now, the fact that you showed up today, the fact that you want to take the initiative into moving into the next steps, you have decided that you don't only need a change, but you want a change. And so this is where we begin making those changes. Now, after, I do have additional private coaching one-on-one. And this is where we're going to start from the beginning, where your habits and fears have started and what's contributing to your stress and anxiety right now. We're going to work to get together to dive into those patterns and get down into the root. Because once we do that, we will start embodying ourselves and really feeling this work. In order for us to know that this work is going to change, we have to step into it. And once we do that, we can then add to our toolbox. We can discover new tools and find different ways to allow you to use these tools so that you can walk into work and know that you feel different. This change is occurring and it feels good and it feels so right to you. You begin to feel safe in your body, your confidence returns, and you aren't saying yes to every single project. So this one-on-one private coaching is for you. If you want to understand what's actually happening when your anxiety begins to take over, instead of feeling blindsided by it. You want to be able to calm your body in the moment so you're not reacting and overthinking or just shutting down. You want to catch your patterns early before they spiral into burnout, people pleasing, or even avoidance. You want to learn tools so you can use them in real time. This is for you if you want to trust yourself again, especially in those stressful situations, instead of second guessing everything you say or do. You want to show up at work and your life feeling grounded, clear, focused, and steady, even when things around you maybe are unsteady. You want to stop managing your anxiety and actually start changing how you move throughout your life. And I want this to feel doable for you. Not like something that you have to become in order to have this completely different life. So by the end of this one-on-one private coaching, the 6 months that we have together, you are going to be able to identify specific anxiety patterns and triggers. You're going to be able to regain your clarity on how anxiety is showing up for you. And you're going to stop saying, I don't know why I feel this way. You're going to recognize your anxiety in real time, understand your signals and your patterns, and you're going to begin regulating rather than reacting. You're going to identify your desired feelings, and you're going to catch those negative thoughts and patterns as they occur. We're going to develop a personalized set of tools for you so you know how to bring yourself to calm in triggering situations and feel more confident handling stress, work, and relationships. And we're going to stop the I hope this works strategy. And at the end of this, you're going to feel confident in applying tools in these situations. You're going to be able handling challenges without spiraling or shutting down. You're going to be able to make decisions with clarity and confidence and show up as a calmer version of yourself. I want to wholeheartedly thank you so much for attending this training today. You can connect with me in a couple different ways on Instagram at Lo Behold Consulting, and also on my website listed here below. I hope that you found so many good nuggets because this work truly works. I have done this work for so many different years, and it has brought me so much joy and confidence, and on the other side of so many amazing things. Please reach out. Please let me know how this has helped you. And please let me know what you found out during your journaling exercises. I hope that this has brought you even more belief in yourself. And I hope to see you and talk to you soon.